I believe that environmental management is the thing that we must, in this state and in this nation, give our immediate attention to, because unless we do it now, there are tremendous values that will be lost that are irretrievable.
Jobs and the environment go together. In the long term, if you have business and development and adding jobs that is destroying your environment, you will not have a healthy economy. Well, I think Vermont is an incredibly attractive place to locate a business. I think you have an incredible workforce here. The quality of life is really good. There's a real sense of community and a sense of caring. It is expansive to the point of the environment around us and having a place that's safe and healthy. These are the kind of things where people want to live and locate, whether it's a business or an individual.
Governor Davis was a very astute governor and person, and a very human and wonderful person. His feeling, his strong feeling, which he would back up with numbers, that Act 250 would not cost jobs or cost Vermont, it would gain Vermont. That it would not hurt Vermont to have environmental and land use protection, that indeed it would help. And he's absolutely right.
I think we need to take a look at really what Act 250 has done in the state, and that it really does put a very thoughtful process into a structure that I believe is fair, that the structure looks at all aspects of how a development might affect the area.
Vermont's Act 250 requires review of major development projects for environmental and community impacts. It is administered by 9 district commissions around the state who hear testimony and make permit decisions on 10 review criteria, such as traffic and school impacts, water quality, and protection of wildlife habitat. Act 250 is a strict, effective law, and after more than 2 decades, Vermonters have developed strong opinions about the law's effects on our people, economy, and quality of life.
But he was the developer of those 5 lots. When he retained this parcel after developing those 5 lots, he retained a right-of-way to serve the large parcel. 6.
Citizen involvement isn't just something that I think is to be tolerated. I think actually the involvement of the citizens in the commission decisions and in the environmental board decisions is the only thing that really keeps the whole thing honest.
If you came up there and saw for yourself.
About how wide is the road?
It's a process where people who have concerns can come to a commission and bring them up, present evidence, and the commission can evaluate the information that they're getting from the neighbors or from people objecting to the project. Perhaps people are concerned about their water supply, or they're concerned about where the sewage disposal fields are going to be located. And in the course of the hearing, they have their questions answered or their problems resolved. Most of our hearings are pretty small. A few of our hearings on the more complex projects, we get maybe 10 people, or in a rare case, we may get 25 people. But generally, they're small and fairly informal.
The important thing that Act 250 gives to citizens or to adjoining landowners or to neighbors who are concerned or going to be affected by projects is that they're pretty much guaranteed to have a fair hearing. And Act 250 is the only place where that fair hearing is really guaranteed.
That particular allowance in Act 250 is, in my opinion, a real gem of the democratic process, in that it allows a voice of the people from the bottom up. The grassroots really do have a place in which to deal with what's going to happen in their community.
We need to define more what evidence can be accepted. There is a need for professional guidance in determining who can testify and who can't testify, and what evidence is going to be accepted by the commission and what evidence isn't.
I can understand people not wanting every Tom, Dick, and Harry to be involved in the hearing, but if in fact the process is to try and gather as much information as possible in order to be able to make a well-informed decision, which is what I think the process is supposed to do. And the guy who's been there, who's walked the land, who's hunted the land, who's raised his crops there or whatever, is certainly going to know the land better than someone who comes in and looks at it for a day or two.
One very important distinction for lower income people, the Act 250 process is quasi-judicial. You can participate as a citizen and just go in there. It's not before a judge. You get an opportunity to present your arguments. You don't have to file motions and briefs and all this stuff and do discovery and whatever all else is required in a court of law. That's what I enjoy the most about the Act 250 process, is that you can do it yourself.
With the trailer homes going in there, but I want, there's quality and there's cheap junk. We want to find out what we're going to have in there.
Okay, well,
In 1991, the program had 1,261 Act 250 permit applications, and 81% of those decisions were issued within 120 days, and 90% were issued within 180 days. Now that takes in a broad range of different kinds of projects.
I think the only time where the slowdowns come into play is where, in fact, there hasn't been clear definition on both sides of exactly what both want. And they may occur too if you become involved in environmental issues where you're reliant perhaps on the Agency of Natural Resources to react to certain aspects of a permit application. And for whatever reasons, there's been a lot of gridlock in the agency over the last 4 or 5 years.
People will hear that the 250 review process is awful. What they're really often hearing is about some other regulatory process which they've stumbled on or been slowed down by. Often when you sort of peel it back and look at what the issues are, it's not the 250 process.
When Ben & Jerry's applied for its Act 250 permits, we had adjoining landowners who participated in the process who had legitimate concerns about our development here. And I think that's an important part of things. I mean, this is democracy. This is what America's all about. Citizen participation. What would Thomas Jefferson say? What would Abraham Lincoln say? They would say, we encourage citizens, residents, to become part of the process. I think having citizens participate in Act 250 process is incredibly valuable. I mean, this is what Vermont is all about.
When the economy is in recession, it's easy to blame environmental laws and say, well, we need to make changes to environmental laws in order to get this economy going. That is a real short-sighted view, because what is so attractive about Vermont is its quality of life.
As the company grew and expanded, we felt like it was a real advantage to be in Vermont because of what Vermont represents to people throughout the country. That it's, we're trying to sell a product that is really wholesome and people feel good about and is healthy, all natural, and what better place to come from than Vermont, where you have clean air, clean water, rolling hills, green fields, cows. It just suggests everything about our product that we wanted to suggest. And not only suggest, but to be. The farmers, the people who produce all these products, are people who live on the land. It's something that they pass along from generation to generation, and it's a real long-term view of things that, if you live on the land and your children are going to live on the land, you take care of it, and it's not just a business proposition. And I think that's the approach that Vermont has had to development.
People that have studied the relationship between Act 250 and the economy have a very hard time identifying any way in which Act 250 has really slowed down economic growth in any significant way. When you look at the period of the 80s, the Vermont economy performed very well relative to the U.S. economy, and its standing in the U.S. when you compare per capita income in Vermont to that in other states steadily improved over the course of the 1980s.
We've been through a lot of permitting at Ben & Jerry's. We've been through Act 250 at Ben & Jerry's. You know, we are a business that goes through the same things that other businesses go through. And my experience, our company's experience with Act 250 was fine. I mean, I think the scrutiny that we came under for the size and scope and impacts of our development here were appropriate and reasonable. And I think the amount of time it took was reasonable. Short-term thinking is really the downfall of business. I mean, I look at things from an economic perspective and a business perspective. You know, I'm not some wild-eyed environmentalist or do-gooder. I think the things that I do and the things that our business does have really practical implications.
Vermont development projects, I'd say in general, as a result of Act 250, tend to be better thought out, better capitalized, and more carefully planned. And as a result, we haven't had a lot of the frivolous development that has occurred in southern New England. We don't have rows and rows of empty condos. We don't have a huge inventory of excess office and manufacturing space. And I think that is in part a result of the homework that people have to do in order to go through the Act 250 process.
As a person that's trying to stimulate growth in areas where we need jobs, or trying to encourage healthy job-creating industries in the state, I've tried to turn the Act 250 into a plus by saying that when you come to Vermont, because of the land use regulations we have and the standards we set, you know what's going to happen on the hillside across the valley from you. You know what's going to happen to the land next door. In an area like New Hampshire, where they don't have these kind of controls, you might be surprised what might come in beside you.
When businesses are considering investing, they're really looking at the stability of the environment. And I actually think it would be very destabilizing to at this point make major changes to the regulatory system, to Act 250. Because I think it sets up, it creates a lot of uncertainty in the minds, I think, of the business community.
A lot of people come here to visit Vermont because of the open scenery. They come here to just see the Vermont as they picture it in their mind, and that picture is created through reality, and if we change the reality, we're going to change that picture down the road, and we're going to impact negatively on tourism.
We all have a stake in what the community that we live in is like. Both our immediate community, our neighborhood, our town, our region, and the state. It's the quality of life that we know on the community level as well as on a personal, individual level. From a good education system for children and young people to jobs for adults so that folks can earn a decent living, to what happens within an area culturally, recreationally, spiritually. The cows on the hillside, the beautiful fall foliage, the ripening corn in the fields. That's what life is all about. And I think that's fundamentally what Act 250 is all about.
Good deal. Thank you.
That's good. I hope you enjoy it.
We'll come back if we don't know.
Well, I tell you, take the one with the label on it there, and then you can find me. And
If we did not have Act 250 here in Vermont, I can guarantee you the place would look a lot different, it would feel a lot different, and it would be a lot different. And from my perspective, and from a lot of other people's perspective, it would be a lot worse.
It's thoughtful about communities. It takes note that when you put in a large development that has some impact, the schools, the fire departments, the police department all have some ramifications here, and this 250 addresses that. I think it's one of the great allies of town government, of the selectmen, of town managers, if there is one, of school boards, of planners, of police chiefs, of fire chiefs. All of these people, I think, should be very grateful for A250.
You tend your garden and you fertilize it and you plant a cover crop in the fall so that it will be ready to plant and create a bounty the following year. And really that's what we're dealing with in Act 250, of just keeping the continuity and the generations going from year to year, and to look out to the future of like what is the best stewardship of our resource being the whole state, and our community being all of the natural and social and human resources that we have.
Citizens have retained Act 250 as an important regulatory tool to look at land use and development in Vermont, because it allows us to effectively protect some of the traditional values that we want to preserve for our children and our children's children in Vermont.
Vermont made a significant contribution nationally and internationally to the land use and environment scene. We didn't do everything perfectly and we had some holes, but I think that we as a state took hold and are doing something quite significant and far-reaching that others can emulate, and we can work together toward a sustainable world here.
In a perfect world, everybody would care about everybody else and do what was appropriate for everybody else and not think only of their narrow economic self-interest. But we don't live in a perfect world, and I think there needs to be thinking about the common good, and I think that's sort of what we entrust our state leaders with, to say there are times when you need to look out for the common good, and that's exactly what Act 250 is about.
Act 250 is respected nationally for its efficiency and the economic and environmental dividends it pays out to the people of Vermont every year. But the message of today's times is clear. Vermonters must rally around this important law. Making Act 250 the target of permit reform efforts misses the real issue, which is to coordinate other state and local permitting programs with Act 250 and encourage better town and regional planning throughout Vermont. The environmental and economic future of the Green Mountain State might depend on your involvement.